Anytime. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special session for day three of our AANHPI Caucus Virtual Summit. Today we have Sri Velakat, who is the College Democrats of America AANHPI Caucus Chair. So he's the college equivalent of my role, actually, which is pretty cool. So I'd love for him to introduce himself and then get into what he plans to talk about. Super excited.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, my name is Sri Velakat. I'm at American University in Washington, D.C. Been involved in political affairs and actions for a few years now. I serve currently as the College Democrats of America's AANHPI chair, as well as the National Youth Liaison for the South Asian voting organization They See Blue, and some other posts in the area, as well as one of the founders of the Loudoun County Young Democrats. So, with that aside, let's get into it, right? Today's session is about how we can activate action post the high school scene. To do that, let's first understand how this action can look once we leave the high school scene. And to that extent, the College Democrats of America, just like the High School Democrats of America, is an incredibly decentralized organization, right? You have college chapters across your country. And there come with this, especially in the collegiate scene, a lot of pros, a lot of cons. And what happens a lot of time, especially as we've seen lately with, for example, activism for Gaza, is you have a lot of independent collegiate chapters that come in and that host their own sort of protests, their own sort of activities, and that overall make it harder to get national mobilization efforts out in the same way you can with the high school chapters or even, before and after. Because college really, for a lot of people, is a time of freedom. What comes with freedom is naturally a side effect of people want their own individualized freedom even within an organization. And so organizationally as a whole, you have a lot of freedom in acting in your own collegiate chapter and planning your own protests and engaging in your own community. And I highly, highly recommend you all do that. The problems then come in the collegiate scene when you think about how this sort of action manifests itself. And what happens is instead of slow and consistent action in a lot of college areas, you have high risk, high reward action just happening more naturally. So, one thing to keep in mind if you want to make a difference in the collegiate world, do things that can work big and flashy, true, but make sure to stay within your little grassroots area, grow your own roots, and then stick determinedly to what you know. And this is one thing I see a lot of newcomers to the collegiate scene struggle with a lot. They want, now that they're out of high school, now that they're away from home a lot of times, and they have this freedom to really burst onto the scene, to really strongly and proudly make a difference, be waving their flags and their banners, and be going downtown to protest and setting up things and so on and so forth. And then they burn themselves out because that's how a lot of these things happen when you're working in this really high intensity, high risk, high reward sort of endeavor. You're not able to commit yourself to this slow and steady and slow and steady and slow and steady and so on and so on and so forth action that a lot of what collegiate action, post collegiate action, especially, actually properly requires. To that extent, if you know where you're going to college, start now by reaching out to areas in your organizations in the area they're in. Or if you're going to college, in the area of your home, if you're staying close to home, reach out to areas around you right now. If there is a Young Democrats chapter, for instance, join it. If there's collegiate Democrats, send them a message, try to get a Zoom call with them, their leadership. If there's other organizations or people to talk to, or state senators, state representatives, shoot them an email, try to talk to them. The more you build for yourself these networks of organizational support and structure, the better the end results will inevitably be for you when the time in college comes for those who are able to have long term determined action as compared to those aforementioned bursts of energy that can work, but more often than not end up only leaving liminal results compared to the actions we want to see. And I don't think that we can have a conversation about college and the College Democrats of America without talking about how systematically we're seeing this massive, massive change in how collegiate activism is changing. So I want you all to think back to, for instance, September or October 2024, when you had a lot of colleges like Columbia University or George Washington University, you're making these really big headlines for their protests, their encampments, they're working together. If you look now, a lot of those same universities, I have friends at Columbia, friends at George Washington who are involved in the college dems. I've given them calls. People aren't organizing as much. Why? It's because, especially with the current administration, high risk, high reward actions are high voltage as well. They have a larger risk of that risk rather than the chance to get that reward. So people don't want to act as much. People don't want to have these things going on. What does this practically mean on the ground? I mean, we're all hearing about, the Trump administration's war with Harvard, how they're cracking down on the Department of Education, so on and so forth. What does it actually mean? It means that we're not seeing as much high risk, high reward action that has defined for years since the Vietnam War, this collegiate scene, and we're not seeing that. But we're also not seeing this low risk reward action that needs time to build itself up. As a result, across the country right now, collegiate seeds are stagnating because people are unwilling to take their time to act, especially as things are moving along. What does that mean for you? It means that for you, this is a chance to really go in there, prove yourselves as leaders, and continue the activization struggle. It means that it's time for you as individuals to really go and work on building institutional, organizational support, the support that is the absolute bedrock, the cornerstone, the key of how we can continue our structure of post collegiate organization. Let's look back at around 50 years, right? Let's look at the era, for example, the Vietnam War. What were the most successful collegiate organizations then? You had, I think the biggest one is Students for a Democratic Society. How did SDS make their mark? Especially if you're going into college, is one thing you want to keep in mind. How did SDS make their mark? They didn't make their mark by only doing the big protests, by only doing the Chicago 7. They made their mark by having something called SDS and having that SDS thing be strong. And this is something that we can learn from and we can apply to our own scene. Post high school organization requires people who are dedicated to take those meetings, take those calls, to be able to put themselves in because it is a higher effort endeavor than inevitably what you are doing in high school. It is more to do in college because you are living on yourself. You're living most likely a decent bit away from your parents, and you are living in a situation where if you want change, you have to really fight for it and make the time yourself. You have to make this time. You have to have these time management skills that allow yourself in the midst of the classes and learning how to, fend for yourself in terms of food and electricity and learning how to, maybe you want to live off campus next year and get an apartment there. And you have to learn also how to fit in time for things like the College Democrats of America. And that's one thing that you need to start doing now as high schoolers as well. Think about what the move to college can work like, right? Think about what happens when you move off of high school. What happens then? You don't just suddenly, have more time and have more freedom without any consequences. You have to take care of yourself. And this is one thing that I encourage you all to do. Start working in these organizations and building this organizational support that I've stressed on so many times thus far, but also keep in mind your personal role here. The collegiate struggle is one where you're going to have to be able to have some more individual responsibility, which people don't often realize, and which is why so many people burn out of the collegiate scene. If you want to stay a passionate and committed activist in your college years, you have to look at what the administration's doing and go, we will outlive this because we are students of the future. And you have to be the ones willing to make the effort to put that time in and to continue slowly building yourself there. And this is the importance of the future. This is one thing that I urge you all to do. And I don't want to lecture too much at you. This is not my thing, but I wanted to get an initial speech out to you all just to talk about the lived reality of the collegiate experience. It's a lot more smoke and mirrors in there that don't need to be in there. And it's a lot more different than the high school experience than frankly it needs to be because people haven't gotten the ground realities of the situation met. So with that in mind, I was thinking we take the next, part of my talk here, the next part of the special session, just to talk with you guys. Tell me questions about you have about college. Let's talk about what fears, what desires, what dreams you have for your own time in college, and let's talk about what we can do together.
Yeah, so as someone who probably ends up is probably ending up staying within the college Democrats of Georgia scene, as I'm from Georgia right now. How would you recommend like connecting to various different like community colleges beyond like where you actually end up matriculating? Like for example, there's like over 70 universities, I think, in Georgia, but there's not like college Dems chapters at every single one. So
First things first, commit to your local chapter before anything else because you want to have this solid community. And what I've noticed is that the schools with the best individual communities are also the schools that do the most nationally because they're able to transfer this effort, right? A school that's able to have organization locally, the school that's able to have organization nationally, because they already have the skills and the resources in the community required to take the time out of their day to organize something in a structure like this. Once you get into a position of leadership, either in CDG or in the greater CDA sphere, then you can start reaching out to interested students via social media, via other campaigns. Be like, hey, I urge you to start a chapter. Then you can start reaching out to other chapters and finding ways to go from there and working together. But for the first part of your leg, work within your own collegiate chapter. If you don't have a community, you can't go anywhere from there because you're by yourself. So one way or another, maybe you find that in your in this one friend you have who goes to this college, or maybe you find it in the fact that you're going there and you have friends now in the CD chapter. You have to build yourself a community first because they're the ones who are going to stick back you through thick and through thin.
Yeah. Another question. You were originally from Virginia, but then you moved to DC, right, for university. How do you continue to stay connected to your state and then also the place that you're now calling home for the next 4 or 2 or so years?
So I'm lucky in the fact that I live about 40 minutes away from my house in Northern Virginia. So I'm from Northern Virginia. It's pretty close by to DC. So I was able to
Mhm.
go down. I'm still active in the Northern Virginia scene. Um, but the biggest things are if you're moving further away, a few things. Firstly, you have summers. In the summer, work in local places, work in local campaigns, do things like that. Secondly, when you're not in the summer, when you're in the school year, commit yourself fully to whatever you're doing then and there. You're gonna have to probably get a bit away from your local scene for a few years if you're moving a bit further than where I did, but that's not an issue. And I'll tell you why it's not an issue. It's because when you're moving away, the skills you're going to learn and the contacts you're going to make are going to come much more in handy in 5 years if you're actually committing yourself fully to what you're doing. If you try to do a game of half and half without fully engaging in either, especially let's say your home state is California and you're going to college in New York. If you're not able to go to California, you're not able to actually engage with those connections. And when you're in California, you can't engage with New York, vice versa. You're not going to be able to get the benefits out of either, and you're not going to be able to fully support either. So both you and both the structure of the organization itself suffer as a result. So if you want to engage with the organization, do it in the summer, do it in the times you can fully do it. But in the rest of the year, commit yourself fully to either a national chapter, which you can do, maybe once you work up the ranks, or to a place of, your local chapter and then your state chapter, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Um, I would say also, how do you deal with like inactive college, um, like I guess inactive college chapters? Like for example, I would say that CDG is probably very low active. So to the point where like high schoolers talk more in the CDG chat than the college Democrats chat because they joined early. So it's just like a very interesting dynamic, I feel.
That's not just CDG, that's about every single collegiate chapter. And I'll tell you why. What I said earlier in terms of college is a lot of things going on at once, right? You're in a high school young Democrats, you have a bit more freedom to act there. You have a bit more time to act there and things that I do there because you're not caring for a lot of the things that you're going to have to care for in college. Namely, most people in the high school Democrats don't have to worry as much about independent structuring, time management, especially going on later in college. They don't have to worry about things like paying for groceries and rent, most of them things like that that can really affect you. A lot of people in high school don't have, full-time jobs or even part-time jobs to the same degree that you're going to have in college. And so when you have all these things going on, people are concerned in college mainly about doing smaller things if they can, or um, for the average college Democrat member, like I said, really big action thing. That's why you saw, for example, when the Palestine protests were in their heyday, the most action CDA has been in a while, because that's a high risk, high reward issue. The question comes now, especially in the Trump administration's era, how we can engage collegiate Democrats to do what they're doing, even in a low risk, low reward situation, but or even a low risk, high reward, high risk, low reward situation, mind you, to get their organization built up. But keep in mind that people are much more active, especially in college, on the ground than they are in chats and social media, for better or for worse. They're dreaming, they're talking about things going on. They're usually working with actual, Congress people or state senators. You're going to find much more college Democrats active in things like internships or working with actual people serving right now than in an independent organization like this or a young Democrats organization, because the college is more than anything else, CDA tends to be a supplementary tool to those who are actually on the front lines of this current battle.
How would you say people can continue to stay involved in like AAPI related advocacy? Because obviously, um, it becomes slightly harder to stay connected to the organizations you were in high school and then also continue to stay connected to the ones that you now get to work with in college. So, I mean, how would you, I guess, bridge that gap and what you've done so far?
You want to be active in the API scene in college, join organizations. You have this ability to join so many national organizations for AAPI youth. So do that. Join them. Join, your local AAPI organizations on your college campus. There's going to be a few. There's going to be some in your city. And there isn't the scene carved out for AAPI caucuses or AAPI action on college campuses as much as there is in high school, for the sole reason of, like I said earlier, a lot of AAPI youth or a lot of youth in general who could be in college Democrats are instead, working in other places, in other organizations, in nonprofits, in places where they can make a difference on the front lines. So you're going to have options, but you have to look for them and you have to look outside of what you think is the high school box. College is all about expanding your knowledge base. So expand that knowledge base, go to other places, go do other things, and you're gonna have a good time once you find an organization. For example, like I mentioned, They See Blue earlier. I found that when I was in college, and now I'm the national youth liaison for that. I work on a national level. I'm coordinating chapters from DC to Georgia to California to Michigan, and I found that the new opportunities that I had when I was in college. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Would there be any advice for anyone who are incoming freshmen to college?
Take care of yourself first and foremost. Sleep well, drink water, and make sure that you're doing your time responsibly. That's the biggest thing to say. Make sure you're managing your time responsibly, that you have an idea for time management, because that's the biggest thing in college. People always ask me, because I tend to be, I'm pretty active. How do I do everything I do? It's because I do time management. It's one skill I've made myself learn more than anything else. I think that's been really useful for myself and for a lot of the other people I know who practice it like I do. So get time management down pat. It'll save your ass so many times. Also, go to office hours. We love office hours. Go to every office hours with your professors. Get to know your professors.
Oh my gosh. I've heard the office hour one a lot.
Because it's true. The office hours have saved me so many times from, like, you know, I'm like, I need a day extension. The professor knows me from office hours. Are like much more willing to give me an extension than, John two seats over, because John doesn't know the professor. You
Oh,
got to
that's
build this personal relationship, same as in high school, but like to an even bigger extent. If you got to seek it out, and for seeking it out, you get the time to do it, and for the time to do that, you need time management.
um, how would you say you continue to see yourself involved in advocacy even post college?
I think college, like I said, is this time for expansion, and I definitely see myself, working in places that I wouldn't have dreamed of in high school. There's so many organizations and so many networks and so many people to know out there. So make sure in college you guys network. Make sure you talk to people. Talk to your elected officials. Get to know your elected officials. The fact that some of my elected officials know me personally, I have their, like, I text them sometimes. Like, that's a resource that I didn't dream I would have in high school, right? So know people, and opportunities will come to you for the future.
Absolutely. Is there any lasting things you'd like to say to any high school students looking into going into college and then also preparing for it?
The second semester of your senior year is really easy. So that senioritis is a real thing. Try not to let it bite you in the ass too much. Finish your Common App essay in the summer before your senior year. It makes life so much easier if you finish that 650-word essay beforehand. And also, don't sweat. College is but 4 years. A lot of times, your future employers won't look at you and go, well, you only went to UCDF instead of UCDG, so I'm gonna fire you. No, like, people just want to know, did you get a degree? If you're going for a job that requires degrees, and they want to know more so who you know. So get to know people. Biggest thing I'd say, don't stress about actually college too much. learn from your classes, give them your 110%, and get to know people as much as you can.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, folks, so much. I'm going to head out probably then. I have some work I need to finish related to this,
Yeah,
actually. But it was
I
lovely
will.
getting to see you all.
Yeah, let me end this off really quick, and you can probably stop the recording.